Some stories begin with heroes who look the part, strong, fearless, ready for the fight. But this story isn't one of those. It begins with a quiet schoolteacher named Emma. She didn't walk into the broken rifle shooting range to prove she was the best. She walked in carrying an old battered rifle, and a reason no one in that room could have guessed. They laughed at her. They mocked her. But what happened next wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about kindness, courage, and the kind of strength that changes lives. This is the story of how one act of quiet determination turned ridicule into respect and gave hope to a little girl who needed it most. The first time Emma stepped into Broken Rifle, the local shooting range tucked between a gas station and a forgotten diner, she knew she didn't belong. The place reeked of gun oil and bravado. Men in camo jackets slapped each other's backs. Women in sleek shooting glasses compared their targets, and teenagers in baseball caps bragged about their kills on clay pigeons. Emma wasn't any of those things. She was a quiet 32-year-old elementary school teacher who wore oversized sweaters and carried her grandmother's old leather satchel. She wasn't there to prove anything, at least not in the way the others thought. But the moment she signed her name on the clipboard at the counter, someone snorted. "You? With that?" A man with a beard down to his chest pointed at the small, battered .22 rifle she carried. The wooden stock was scratched, the scope barely hanging on. The laughter spread like wildfire. "Lady, this isn't story time at the library. Better keep that antique in a museum. She gonna shoot daisies with it?" Emma's cheeks flushed. She didn't answer. She just nodded politely and moved to her lane. She had heard worse before, mostly from the same type of people who laughed too loud at their own jokes. What they didn't know was why she was there. 2 months earlier, one of Emma's students, 9-year-old Lily, had asked her the strangest question. "Miss Carter, do you think my mom can hear me when I pray?" Lily's mom had been in a terrible car accident. She survived, but she was bedridden at home, unable to move much or speak. Doctors weren't sure if she'd ever fully recover. Lily's father worked 2 jobs to cover medical bills, and the little girl spent most afternoons sitting by her mom's bedside talking into the silence. Emma had wanted so badly to give her hope, but she knew words alone weren't enough. Then one day, while helping Lily with a craft project in class, Emma noticed a picture the girl had drawn. Herself, her mom, and something flying overhead. When asked, Lily explained it was a clay pigeon, a target from the shooting range her mom used to visit. She was the best shot in town, Lily said proudly. She could hit anything. She always said it made her feel strong. That night, Emma made a decision. She would learn to shoot, not for herself, but so Lily could see her mom's strength reflected somewhere again, even if her mother couldn't hold a rifle anymore. Back at Broken Rifle, Emma lined up her shot. The murmurs and laughter behind her made her hands tremble. She wasn't a natural. Her first few shots barely touched the target, each miss earning another round of chuckles from the onlookers. "Just quit, lady. You're wasting ammo." But Emma kept going. She stayed late, cleaned her rifle, and came back the next day. The ridicule became background noise, like static on an old radio. Every time she adjusted her grip, every time she learned to steady her breathing, she whispered Lily's name under her breath. Then came the annual community shoot-off, a contest Emma hadn't even planned to enter. But when the announcer called her name, written in by someone on the sign-up sheet, the crowd erupted in laughter again. Broken Rifle's mascot, this'll be good. Emma walked to the line, her heart pounded. The final round was announced, flying targets. The hardest challenge. The machine launched the first clay pigeon. Emma missed. Laughter echoed. The second flew. Missed again. The crowd's jeers grew louder, but she forced herself to breathe. And then, on the third target, something changed. Emma remembered Lily's drawing. She pictured the little girl's face, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of her mother. She steadied her stance, blocked out the noise, and squeezed the trigger. Crack! The clay pigeon shattered midair into a burst of orange dust. The range went silent. Emma lowered her rifle slowly. The laughter was gone. The crowd just stared. And then, almost by accident, she hit the fourth, then the fifth. One by one, each flying target burst apart, until the impossible became undeniable. When the contest ended, she wasn't the champion. But she had done something none of them expected. She had turned their laughter into stunned respect. That weekend, Emma visited Lily's home. She carried a small video clip. Someone from the range had recorded her shots. She sat with Lily and her mom, showing them how she shattered the targets. Lily's eyes widened with joy. "Mom, did you see? Just like you used to do." For the first time in months, Lily's mother's lips curved into the faintest smile. A tear rolled down her cheek. She couldn't speak, but the message was clear. Emma reached for Lily's hand and whispered, "Your mom still hears you, and she's still strong. You just reminded her." From then on, Emma kept practicing, not to silence critics, but to carry a piece of hope into that home. And people at Broken Rifle stopped laughing. Some even began to nod in quiet respect when she arrived, because sometimes the truest strength doesn't come from the loudest voices or the biggest guns. Sometimes it comes from showing up, even when the world expects you to fail, especially when you're doing it for someone else. And Emma proved that kindness, steady as a heartbeat, could hit targets no one else even saw. End message: never underestimate the power of quiet determination. When kindness guides your aim, you'll hit more than targets. You'll touch lives. Got it. I'll continue in English and expand this into a spoken narration script style so it flows naturally for a 10 to 12-minute delivery. I'll add pacing cues like pauses, emphasis, or softer tones to help the story land emotionally when read aloud. Narration script, opening, hook. Have you ever walked into a room where you knew instantly you didn't belong? That's exactly what happened to Emma the first time she stepped into Broken Rifle, the town's shooting range. She wasn't a hunter, she wasn't a competitor. She was just an elementary school teacher, in a baggy sweater, carrying her grandmother's old beat-up rifle. And the moment the others saw her, they laughed. Hard. "Lady, that thing belongs in a museum. She gonna shoot daisies with it?" Their voices were sharp, mocking, and loud enough for her to hear. But Emma didn't answer. She just nodded politely and walked to her lane. Transition. Why she was there, what nobody at Broken Rifle knew was why she had come. See, 2 months earlier, one of her students, 9-year-old Lily, asked Emma a question that broke her heart. "Miss Carter, do you think my mom can hear me when I pray?" Lily's mom had been in a terrible car accident. She survived, but she couldn't walk, couldn't talk. She was stuck in a quiet, painful world. And Lily, this bright, sweet little girl, would sit by her mom's bed every afternoon, whispering stories, hoping her words could still reach her. Emma wanted so badly to help, to give her hope. But what could she possibly say? Then one day, during a classroom art project, Emma noticed Lily's drawing, a picture of her and her mom, and a clay pigeon flying overhead. "Mom was the best shot in town," Lily said with pride. "She could hit anything. She always said it made her feel strong." That was the moment Emma decided, if Lily couldn't see her mother's strength anymore, then Emma would show it back to her. She would learn to shoot, not for herself, but for Lily. Struggle at the range, back at Broken Rifle, Emma raised her rifle for the first time. Her hands trembled. The rifle was old, the scope barely hanging on. Bang, miss, bang. Another miss. The crowd behind her laughed louder. "Just quit, lady. You're wasting ammo." But Emma kept showing up. Day after day, she cleaned her rifle, practiced her stance, learned to breathe steady. Every time she pulled the trigger, she whispered one word under her breath, "Lily." The laughter eventually faded into background noise. Because Emma wasn't shooting for them. She was shooting for a little girl who needed hope. The contest, turning point, weeks later came the town's annual shoot-off. Emma hadn't signed up, but someone, maybe as a joke, had written her name on the list. When the announcer called it out, the whole place roared with laughter. "Broken Rifle's mascot, this'll be good." Emma's heart pounded as she stepped to the line. The final round was announced, flying targets, the hardest of all. The first clay pigeon shot into the air. Bang. Miss. Laughter. The second flew. Bang. Another miss. More laughter. Emma closed her eyes for a moment. She pictured Lily. She pictured that drawing. She pictured a mother's strength, waiting to be remembered. She steadied her grip, breathed deep. The third target launched. Crack! The clay pigeon exploded mid-air into a cloud of orange dust. The crowd went silent. Emma lowered her rifle, slowly, calmly. Then the fourth target flew. Crack! Another hit. The fifth, crack, hit again. One after another, the pigeons shattered. She didn't win the contest that day, but she won something bigger. For the first time, no one at Broken Rifle was laughing. Climax, bringing it home. That weekend, Emma visited Lily's home. She carried a video. Someone at the range had recorded her shots. She sat with Lily and her mom and pressed play. On the screen, the orange targets burst apart, one after another. Lily's eyes widened in amazement. "Mom, did you see? Just like you used to do." And then, something happened. For the first time in months, Lily's mom's lips curved, just slightly, into the faintest smile. A single tear slid down her cheek. She couldn't speak. But the message was clear. She felt it. Emma reached over, held Lily's hand and whispered, "Your mom still hears you, and she's still strong. You just reminded her." Closing, uplift. From then on, Emma kept practicing. Not to silence critics, not to prove anything, but to carry a little piece of hope into a home that desperately needed it. And at Broken Rifle, nobody laughed anymore. Some even nodded quietly when she walked in, out of respect. Because sometimes real strength isn't about being the loudest, or the fastest, or the best. Sometimes real strength is showing up when the world expects you to fail. And when you aim with kindness, steady as a heartbeat, you don't just hit targets, you touch lives. End message spoken softly. Never underestimate the power of quiet determination. The smallest act of kindness can be the shot that shatters silence and changes everything. Perfect. Let's continue in English and keep the flow going naturally, carrying that uplifting tone through to a fuller global-style ending. I'll extend it slightly so that it fills out the narration to the 10 to 12-minute range, adding reflective moments and a warm wrap-up. Continuation. Reflection after the contest. Word spread quickly after that day. People in town who had once laughed began to tell the story differently. She showed up every week. She didn't quit, even when she missed. She hit those flying targets like she was born for it. But Emma never let it go to her head. Because she knew this was never about pride. It was about a little girl who needed to see strength again. And Lily? She couldn't stop talking about it. She brought the video clip to school. She told her friends, her grandparents, even the cashier at the grocery store. "Miss Carter's a hero," she said. But Emma would just smile and shake her head. "No, Lily, your mom's the hero. She gave you courage. I'm just helping you see it." A deeper realization the weeks that followed weren't easy. Lily's mother still faced long days and quiet nights, but something had shifted. That tiny smile, the tear, the recognition in her eyes, it gave the family hope. Emma realized something powerful. Strength isn't always loud. It isn't always about winning, or breaking records, or proving people wrong. Sometimes strength is as quiet as showing up every day, as gentle as believing in someone when they can't believe in themselves. As simple as kindness, repeated until it takes root. The larger impact soon, others at the range started approaching Emma. One woman, a grandmother, asked if Emma would help her learn because she'd always been too nervous before. A teenager who once snickered at her now stood a little taller when she offered him a few kind words. And slowly, Broken Rifle wasn't just a place for competition. It became a place where people supported one another, not because Emma was the best shot, but because she reminded them what it meant to carry humanity into a space built on competition. Closing, global uplift. Emma's story reminds us of something we often forget, that even when the world laughs, even when people doubt us, when we act from kindness, we can change the whole atmosphere of a room. It doesn't take grand speeches. It doesn't take trophies or medals. Sometimes, it just takes one person who chooses compassion over pride, perseverance over mockery, and love over fear. Emma didn't just hit a flying target. She hit something much more powerful, the human heart, and that's a shot worth remembering. Final spoken line, soft, reflective, so the next time someone doubts you or doubts your kindness, remember Emma. At Broken Rifle, they laughed at her, but in the end her aim reached further than anyone expected. Understood. Let's carry the story forward in English and give it a final, extended continuation that ties up Emma's journey with warmth, perspective, and a lasting moral for the listener. Continuation. Months later, months passed, and life at Broken Rifle looked different. Emma wasn't the woman they laughed at anymore. She had become the woman who never quit. Every weekend she showed up quietly, same old sweater, same battered rifle, and every weekend a few more people greeted her with respect. Not because she was perfect, she still missed plenty of shots, but because she represented something bigger than skill. She reminded them of humility, of patience, of why people pick up challenges in the first place, not always to win, but sometimes to heal. Emma and Lily's bond at school. Lily grew brighter too. Her drawings changed, the colors grew bolder. Instead of sad faces, her sketchbooks filled with smiles and birds in flight. One afternoon, as Emma tidied the classroom, Lily ran up with a new picture. It showed 3 people this time, Lily, her mom, and Emma, standing together, under a sky full of clay pigeons bursting into orange dust. "You're part of our family now," Lily said shyly. Emma swallowed hard, her eyes stinging. She realized then that sometimes the kindest thing you can give someone isn't answers, it's presence. A small town changes. By the following year, the community shoot-off felt different too. It wasn't just about who had the sharpest aim anymore. Families showed up with picnics. Parents encouraged kids to try without fear of embarrassment. And when newcomers struggled, people cheered them on instead of laughing. Emma's quiet determination had reshaped more than her own life. It had reshaped an entire community. Closing reflection, uplift. It's funny how laughter can sting, but it can also fade. And when it fades, what people remember most isn't who mocked the loudest. It's who stood steady. Emma taught a little girl that her mother's strength still lived on. She taught a town that kindness can echo louder than cruelty. And she proved that sometimes when you aim with love, you don't just hit the target, you change the people watching too. Final words: gentle, universal, wherever you are. USA, UK, Canada, anywhere in the world. Remember this. Don't be afraid to show up with your small, imperfect gifts. Because when they're fueled by kindness, they can ripple further than you ever imagined. At Broken Rifle, they laughed at her. But in the end, her kindness was the truest bullseye of all.